Prayer.
Dear Lord, this week we launch in earnest our primordial duty as a legislature, setting forth and honing our national budget for the year 2021. Evoking its original French root, budget, or little bag. Indeed, every budget in this age of the pandemic is too little, niggardly, and inadequate to address the multitude of needs of our benighted people. Thus we pray, O Lord, for enlightenment and mercy to provide sufficiently for our beleaguered health services. We beseech your grace and goodness to find resources to give our sick, our weak, our most vulnerable the medical treatment and care that they deserve. We rely on your divine inspiration and love to provide employment for all of our people, to create a decent living for every family, and to restore a healthy economy at the soonest possible opportunity. For indeed, we know, with our deep faith in you, that this global crisis is too an opportunity. May you give us the strength to wrest from the jaws of this pandemic the change and transformation that our country, the Philippines, our troubled people, our society direly needs. Make this budget not merely the ledger of paltry sums made and wantonly spent, nor worse, a mere record of political maneuvering and opportunism, but instead, may the General Appropriations Act of 2021 truly be an expression of the struggle and purpose of the Filipino people in these difficult times. Compassionate we remain, united and bravely confronting the virus, believing in the power of the Almighty Lord that we too shall overcome. So help us God.
Amen. The Secretary will please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Angara.
Present.
Dinay.
Present.
Ano.
Present.
De Lima. De La Rosa.
Present.
Rilon.
Present.
Chalian. Go.
Present.
Gordon.
Present.
Ontiveros.
Present.
Axon. Lapid. Marcos. Pacquiao.
Present.
Pangilinan.
NB.
Pimentel III. O.
Present.
Recto.
Present.
Revilla.
Present.
Tolentino.
Present.
Villanueva.
Present.
Villar.
Present.
Zubiri.
Present.
Senate President Soto III.
Present. With 4 senators physically present, 18 senators virtually present, a total of 22 senators, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we defer the approval of the Journal of the 10th session, Monday, September 14, at a later hour, Mr. President. So move.
Hearing no objection, the approval is deferred.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary will proceed with the reference of business.
Reference of business, bills on first reading. Senate number 1822 entitled An Act Renaming Del Monte Avenue in Quezon City to Fernando Poe Jr. Avenue, introduced by Senator Lapid.
May Senator Lapid allow that this representation be made a co-author? He nodded. Refer to the Committee on Public Works.
Can I be made the co-author also?
Senator Bong Revilla is made the co-author. Senator Lapid.
Same here, Mr. President, if I may.
Senator Villanueva.
Myself as well, Mr. President, the Majority Leader.
Senator Subiri,
Myself also, Mr. President.
Senator De La Rosa,
Marcos,
Senator Marcos, Senator Angara, Senator Villar,
And I think we should consider coconut as a key resource that we should develop after this COVID pandemic. First of all, coconut support farmers. So
Ano yun?
Anyway,
It's an interference, Mr. President. There was an interference.
Senator Lacson, of course, and Senator Gatchalian.
May po-
President.
Yes,
Senator Pacquiao also, Mr. President. And I believe Senator Kiko also raised his hand earlier.
Senator Pangilinan.
Mr. President.
Yes. Senator Boyce recognized before I refer the bill.
I know this is unorthodox, but this is just a referral of the bills. But I would like to sincerely thank our colleagues who've expressed to be co-authors. I'm very touched. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, Senator Grace Poe. Referred to the Committee on Public Works. Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. Please consider me a co-author as well. Salamat po.
Senator Ontiveros, yes. All right. To the Public Works, go ahead.
Senate Number 1823, an act granting San Miguel Aero City Inc. a franchise to construct, develop, establish, operate, and maintain a domestic and international airport in the municipality of Bulacan, province of Bulacan, and to construct, develop, establish, operate, and maintain an adjacent airport city, introduced by Senator Zubiri.
To the Committees on Public Services and Ways and Means.
Senate Number 1824, an act dividing the province of Maguindanao into two provinces, namely Northern Maguindanao and Southern Maguindanao, introduced by Senator Tolentino.
To the Committees on Local Government and Electoral Reforms.
Senate Number 1825, an act converting the municipality of Calaca in the province of Batangas into a component city to be known as the City of Calaca, introduced by Senator Tolentino.
To the Committees on Local Government and Electoral Reforms.
Senate Number 1826, an act reapportioning the second legislative district of the province of Rizal into 3 legislative districts, introduced by Senator Tolentino.
To the Committees on Local Government and Electoral Reforms.
Senate Number 1827, an act establishing the electronic health or e-health system and services in support of universal health care using information and communications technology and appropriating funds therefore, introduced by Senator Marcos.
To the Committees on Health and Science and Technology and Finance.
Senate Number 1828, an act establishing the police law enforcement courts, granting these jurisdiction over civil and criminal cases arising from violations of constitutional rights and PNP rules of engagement committed by the police, amending Batas Pabansa Bilang 129 as amended, otherwise known as the Judiciary Organization Act of 1980, and PD 1606 as amended by RA 10660, creating a special court to be known as Sandigan Bayan, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Gordon.
To the Committees on Justice, Public Order, and Finance.
Senate Number 1829, an act amending Section 13 of Republic Act Number 11223, otherwise known as the Universal Healthcare Act, introduced by Senator Soto III.
To the Committee on Health.
Senate Number 1830, an act to pursue the Armed Forces of the Philippines Modernization Program, amending for this purpose Republic Act Number 9184, otherwise known as the Government Procurement Reform Act, introduced by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committees on Finance, National Defense.
Resolution, PS Resolution Number 523, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the propriety and timeliness of active trading and selling of the country's gold resources by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and its consequent effects to the Philippine economy, introduced by Senator Tolentino.
To the Committee on Banks.
Committee Report Number 110, prepared and submitted by the Committee on Public Services on Senate Number 1831 with Senators Recto, Pacquiao, and Poe as authors thereof, entitled An Act Requiring All Public Telecommunications Entities and Internet Service Providers in the Country to Increase Service Coverage and Deliver a Minimum Standard for Internet Connection Speed, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Bill Number 471, taking into consideration PS Resolution Number 435, sponsor Senator Poe.
To the calendar for ordinary business. There is additional reference to business.
Additional reference of business resolution, PS Resolution Number 524, entitled Resolution Expressing the Sense of the Senate to join the community of member states of the United Nations in commemorating the 40th World Tourism Day on September 27, 2020, introduced by Senator Binay.
To the Committee on Rules.
Committee reports. Committee report number 111, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, Finance, Ways and Means, and Local Government on Senate number 1832 with Senators Go, Soto III, Revilla Jr., De La Rosa, Cayetano, Tolentino, and Angara as authors thereof, entitled An Act Strengthening and Modernizing the Bureau of Fire Protection, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 6975, otherwise known as the Department of the Interior and Local Government Act of 1990, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Bill numbers 204, 947, and 1017, sponsor Senator De La Rosa.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 112, prepared and submitted jointly with the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, Local Government, Civil Service, Government Reorganization, Professional Regulation, and Finance on Senate number 1833 with Senators Lacson, Villanueva, De La Rosa, Revilla Jr., Tolentino, and Angara as authors thereof, entitled An Act Providing for the Rank, Classification, and Organization of Key Positions in the Bureau of Fire Protection, BFP, and Bureau of Jail Management and Penology, BJMP, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 9263, otherwise known as the Bureau of Fire Protection and Bureau of Jail Management and Penology Professionalization Act of 2004, as amended by Republic Act number 9592, and for other purposes, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Bill numbers 415, 1101, and 1201, sponsor Senator De La Rosa.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 113, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development, Science and Technology, and Finance on Senate number 1834 with Senators Angara and Villanueva as authors thereof, entitled An Act to Enhance the Philippine Digital Workforce Competitiveness, establishing for the purpose an interagency council for development and competitiveness of the Philippine digital workforce, and for other purposes, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Bill number 1469, sponsor Senator Villanueva.
To the calendar for ordinary business. The Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of SB number 1357 under committee report number 50. This is the CITIRA bill, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Mr. President, the status of the measure is that we are in the period of interpolation, but I understand that the sponsor, Mr. President, Senator Pia Cayetano, will introduce individual amendments by way of an amendment by substitution. This is in line with our agreement during the previous caucuses, Mr. President, so that at least we can already start discussing the new version that she had readied, Mr. President. I move, with the permission of the body, we move to terminate the period of interpolation without prejudice to our members asking clarificatory questions during the period of amendments. So it's the same process, Mr. President, but we're using the new amended committee report. So I move, Mr. President.
All right, that's within the rules. Any objection? Hearing none, period of interpolation is closed.
And open the period of amendment so that the sponsor, Mr. President, can now move for her bill on substitution, amendment by substitution.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendments open.
May we recognize, Mr. President, the sponsor, Senator Pia Cayetano, to introduce the amendment.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the consent of the body, may we introduce an amendment in the nature of a substitution by striking the entire text of Senate Bill number 1357 below the enacting clause. The text of this proposed amendment, in the nature of a substitute, has been made in writing and distributed to all members through the Secretariat as required by Section 82 of our rules. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objections? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President.
57 is substituted.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
May I now move that the said substitute bill be reflected in its entirety in the records, and that the same be our working draft or floor substitute for purposes of the period of individual amendments.
So that would be as of now working draft as of September 15, 2020. Any objection? Hearing none.
Mr. President, before we move, Mr. President, the minority floor leader would like to be recognized.
Minority Leader is recognized.
Yes, this procedure was discussed with me by the good sponsor last week, and we have no problems. On our understanding that this is done in order to facilitate the interpellation, so that the interpellation and questions during the period of interpolation will now be based on the new substitute bill that was just made of record. So that is our understanding, Mr. President, and I hope the good sponsor can confirm that.
Walang diferensya kung mag-resume.
Yes, Mr. President, we confirm the same.
President, parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President. Mr. President,
Dino is recognized.
if the good sponsor is referring to the bill previously, which I interpolated Her Honor for almost an hour, and I think I was the first to postulate some questions relative to dividends, corporate shareholdings, among others. May I know from the good sponsor, and I seek a ruling from the chair, if my previous interpolation would have to be repeated, and should it be deemed proper that it should be accommodated as incorporated as part of the records of the new interpolation proceedings that would emanate from this new bill, Your Honor?
It is already part of the records. We no longer need to repeat it.
So I need not repeat my interpolation, Mr. President.
Need not. You need not repeat the interpolation.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes. And then, Majority Leader, I don't see any problem if you move for a reconsideration of the interpolation.
Yes, Mr. President, we can do that. We move to open once again the period of interpolation, Mr. President.
Or in the process, in so doing, you are terminating the period of amendments at this point, or suspending.
Yes, Mr. President. We're suspending the period of amendments, and
The motion
we go
is to
back.
reconsider the period of interpolations. All right. Any objection? Hearing none.
Mr. President,
Senator Cayetano is recognized.
it's actually not an objection, but unfortunately, I lost connection right after Senator Dillon's question, where I confirmed what was discussed, but then I did not hear anything after that. I really apologize. I could not connect. So, and then I came back and I overheard Senator Francis asking if he has to repeat his interpellation. But I'm sorry, but I totally missed what happened. Why are we going back into the period of interpellation? Can it just be reiterated for me due to these technical difficulties?
No, Mr. President, with your permission. With the
Yes,
permission of our
Senator
colleagues.
Tolentino.
My point, Your Honor, is our previous interpellation should be made part of the records of the new bill. Since I was the one who, modesty aside, since I was the one who initiated the first and only interpellation, which included hard topics on dividends, shareholding dividends, et cetera, et cetera. So I need not repeat the question. So that should be subsumed as part of the records of the new bill that you are going to sponsor and you have sponsored.
All right.
President,
Technically, before Senator Cayetano responds, technically there is no new bill. We have an amended bill. That is technically how the parliamentary status of the measure is. There is no new bill. This is an amended bill. And there are two ways of doing this, or skinning the cat, so to speak. We either allow clarification in the period of amendments for questions, or we reconsider
Yes, Mr.
the
President.
period of interpolations, which is the motion of the majority leader now, and there is no problem with that. Now, all the interpolations that were done previously by Senator Francis Tolentino are all in the records and need not be repeated.
Yes. So there was just a suggestion of the Senate President, Mr. President, your suggestion to just reconsider the period of interpolation so that there will be no confusion to those who are pending to ask questions, who have pending requests to ask questions and interpolate, Mr.
Yes,
President.
in absence of any objection with unanimous consent, then that is possible. So
Yes,
is there
Mr.
any
President.
objection to the motion of the majority leader? Hearing none, motion is approved. We are in the period of interpolation on Senate Bill 1357.
Yes, Mr. President. My request.
I have a
We just have a
manifestation.
request. Mr. President, we just have a request because the good sponsor, Senator Pia, would like to be able to defend it on the floor. She had asked me to do so. And together with the department secretaries or the secretaries concerned and the department heads concerned, if we can already line up the interpellators for her so that para hindi naman sayang yung punta niya dyan, Mr. President. No? It won't be a waste of her
Yes.
time and the secretary's time.
Yes,
If-
that would be a good move. We agree.
Yes. And actually, just to clarify, Mr. President, Majority Floor Leader, on the floor or in my room, it depends because kung maraming tao, depends. I'm just looking at also the safety of my staff also, and alam niyo naman pag ganito nag-uupugan ng ulo. So but I want to be in the Senate building, so either on the floor or in my office or going back and forth.
On the floor would be ideal because it is very wide. There would be very tolerable social distancing. Even with the department heads here, we can have them at your back, and we can have your the rostrum towards the back of the hall.
And then, Mr. President, as I mentioned to the Majority Floor Leader, if I may request that they let us know the night before so that, we have to inform all of these people. Alam niyo naman pag dumating ang DOF, DTI, mga 100 yan, hindi naman. Pero parang ganon. So we have to inform them, and then as for myself, I will also make sure that I'm available. I mean, I am available, but to
Then
be there.
what would be an ideal day for your honor?
Any day, Mr. President, I'm ready. So it's really up to our colleagues when they are ready. I've given them a copy of the bill, and also to put on record, there were some who submitted more amendments, and that is the reason why it took us another 2 weeks to look at it kasi 53 pages po yun. I've accepted what I can, what were easy to accept. The others we had to clear with DOF, and this may require that we go into caucus or it be brought up further in debates kasi medyo complex din yung iba na hindi ko basta-basta pwedeng ma-accept, Mr. President. So that's the status. So here on, it's up to our members to tell me when they are free. I will make myself available. Thank you.
All right, the majority leader, it would be ideal for you to find out from our colleagues who will interpolate or continue interpolation, and perhaps we can do this Monday.
Senator Drilon is raising his hand, Mr. President.
So that Senator Cayetano can be prepared. Senator Drilon, the minority leader, is recognized.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President. Are the amendments deemed accepted by the body, and so that the version now before us is a substitute measure, substitute committee bill? Just to clarify, in other words, we have gone back to the period of amendments, and since this is a bill, there were amendments to the original bill. Do we know if these amendments are already deemed accepted, or is in the order of business only for purposes of facility in the interpolation? That's our parliamentary inquiry.
The answer is in the affirmative. It is now incorporated in the working draft that we are now. All the amendments that you proposed and that the sponsor included are now part of the working draft and therefore have been accepted.
Accepted. That's correct, Mr. President.
And therefore, these are this bill or this version already incorporates the committee amendments, and by the previous motion approved is that we reopen the period of of interpolation.
Affirmative.
That's correct. That is correct. Mr. President.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. So if there are colleagues of ours, are there colleagues of ours listening now that will be available for tomorrow? Or do we want to schedule it already, Mr. President, first hour Monday?
It's up to you and the Senator Cayetano and those who will interpolate if they'll be ready by tomorrow or Wednesday. Monday, I'm sorry.
Monday. So no one is signifying tomorrow, so we'll do it on Monday, Senator Pia, to the sponsor, unless there's already those who will be available by tomorrow. How about Senator Ralph? Senator Ralph?
Yeah, thank you, Majority Leader. We're just going over the substitute bill, but we're prepared for the interpolations and possible amendments at the appropriate time. We've done also extensive work on this bill already. I look forward to discussing this with the body and to the sponsor. Chances are by Monday.
Okay. Okay, Mr. President. With that, we move to suspend consideration of this measure till Monday, first hour. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any
Mr.
objection?
President,
Mr.
Yes,
President, Sani Angara, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Yes, you're
Sarap ng kain ni Senator Angara, Mr. President.
Mr. President, when Senator Recto gets through with the bill, it's a new substitute bill. I just want to say that for the record, Mr. President.
we respect your opinion, although we're not sure if we agree. All right.
Thank you, Mr. President. I so move.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, consideration suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of those who are going to be interpolated today for interpolation, Senator Joel had requested the sponsorship of his measure so that we can just go on the interpolations later on. With the permission of the body, I move to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order Senate Bill number 1834 under Committee Report number 113. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, so transferred.
Mr. President, I move to consider Senate Bill number 1834 and ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill number 1834, an act to enhance the Philippine digital workforce competitiveness, establishing for the purpose an interagency council for development and competitiveness of Philippine digital workforce and for other purposes.
Consideration is in order. The majority leader is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. There will be three of our colleagues that will sponsor. Of course, first will be the chairperson, the distinguished gentleman from Bulacan, Senator Joel Villanueva, after which, Mr. President, will be Senator Sani Angara and Senator Ramon Bong Revilla. May we recognize Senator Joel Villanueva first, Mr. President.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, I am privileged and pleased to sponsor Senate Bill number 1834, or the Philippine Digital Workforce Competitive Act under Committee Report number 113. This representation, together with the gentleman from Aurora, our seatmate, Senator Sani Angara, are the principal authors of this measure, together with our co-sponsor, Senator Bong Revilla, and others. Mr. President, this bill is in line with the broad vision towards Tatak Pinoy industrialization. Filipino enterprises, entrepreneurs, and professionals are empowered to move up the value chain to produce quality goods and services and to innovate. We speak of the 4IR, or Fourth Industrial Revolution, referring to the growing utilization of new technologies such as artificial intelligence, cloud computing, augmented reality, robotics, the Internet of Things, and advanced wireless technologies in the way we live, we work, and relate with one another. We are already having conversations, Mr. President, with TESDA about the rise of digital careers amid the 4IR back in 2010. We eventually partnered with the Animation Council of the Philippines, Game Developers Association of the Philippines, Philippine Software Industry Association, and other IT BPO industry associations for the development and training regulations on game programming, animation, and programming using Java and Oracle database, among others. Right after the rollout of these training programs, we heard success stories on how our graduates landed freelance jobs immediately. One of them, Mr. President, was Omar Kevin Muhammad of Parañaque City. At first, he was hesitant to take up tech courses. He thought the TESDA courses are jologs. After much convincing from a friend, Omar enrolled in a visual graphics design course, and after obtaining a national certificate 3, he began gaining clients who sought his services as web designer. Tor Sagud of Cabanatuan City was one of our pioneer trainees in 2D digital animation naman, Mr. President, at the Cordillera School of Digital Arts. His certified skills gave him opportunities to get local and international clients. Tor now based in Baguio City, is working as concept artist, comic illustrator, and animator for various local and international studios. Tor has also published the book Igorotak, an illustrated guide, and also started his own art studio, the Studio Sagud. Idagdag ko lang po, Ginoong Pangulo, dahil alam kong matutuwa ang ating kapatid, Senator Sani Angara, para sa kanyang isinusulong na Tatak Pinoy, ang kwento po sa atin ni Tor. Huminto muna siya sa pagtanggap ng mga animation work abroad para lamang po makapag-focus siya sa paggawa ng mga original Filipino artwork. Co-chairman po siya ng Gripo Comics, which is devoted into reviving the Pinoy comics industry. Mr. President, I met Omar and Tor in 2014. They told me how their skills open up doors of opportunities for them. Now that they are all experiencing the raging rivers of change fueled by digitalization, augmentation, automation, among others. Last year, Schneider Electric's industry Internet of Things innovations transformed its plant in Rosario, Cavite, in the Philippines. First, smart factory. Schneider Electric believes that digital transformation throughout the industrial value chain is critical and essential to global competitiveness. The transformation provided more than 1,400 employees in Cavite with training, upskilling, reskilling, opportunities to help them take a higher value jobs. The IT and Business Process Association of the Philippines also set its eyes into the future global trends of the industry. Hence, most IT BPM companies have begun to pivot to digital-enabled services and higher value jobs. Their target is by the year 2020, high-skilled jobs are performed by 27% of their talents from only 15% in 2016. This is equivalent to additional 309,000 highly skilled workers. In fact, Mr. President, IT BPM is moving up the value chain in all sectors. You're talking about contact center and BPO, IT services, animation, global in-house centers, and healthcare information management, among others. Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, on the foregoing context and for the following reasons, we seek approval of Senate Bill number 1834 or the Philippine Digital Workforce Competitive Act. First, to ensure the development of the country's digital workforce by equipping Filipinos with digital skills and with the 21st century skills. This will ensure that Filipino workforce will benefit from the job opportunities provided by digital technologies. Our bill defines digital workforce as any natural person who engages in remunerated activity through the use of digital skills and digital technology, regardless of work or employment arrangement, whether you are a regular or not a regular employee of the company or just as a freelancer, Mr. President. Marami pong nawalan ng trabaho ngayong pandemya, Ginoong Pangulo. Pero marami rin pong oportunidad dahil po sa digital technology. Kailangan lang po nating pagtuunan ng pansin ang pagbibigay ng added labor value sa ating mga kababayan sa pamamagitan ng upgrading ng kanilang skills para makakuha po sila ng oportunidad sa mga digital careers o ma-promote kung saang digital jobs na sila. Sa pamamagitan po ng panukalang batas na ito, Ginoong Pangulo, may isa sa katuparan po o mahihigitan pa ng DICT ang target nitong 500,000 unemployed Filipinos sa ating mga probinsya na maging globally competitive digital workers sa taong 2022. Pangalawa, we want to establish an interagency council for development and competitiveness of the Philippine digital workforce. The council will be the primary planning, coordinating, and implementing body in the promotion, development, enhancement, and competitiveness of the Philippine digital workforce. Third, to empower all local government units together with the public employment service offices o yung PESOs. LGUs will create local policies supporting and promoting the growth and development of digital technology and digital careers and innovations in the respective communities. This includes, though not limited to, providing incentives for technological innovations for agri-fishery industries and hospital care or public health services. Binibigyan po mandato ng panukalang batas na ito ang ating mga peso, hindi lang po para magsagawa ng mga virtual job fairs, Mr. President, kundi para bumuo rin po sila ng mga localized digital technology at digital skills registry sa ating mga munisipyo. Ika-apat, Mr. President, to enter into public-private partnerships with experts, information technology, business processing outsourcing, industry associations, private companies, and other stakeholders in the formulation and implementation of training, skills development, and certification programs. Some of the programs that we included in the proposed measure are web development, online teaching, animation, content creation, digital marketing, graphic designing, 3D modeling, and CAD or computer-aided design, game development, mobile application development, virtual assistance, business intelligence and data analytics, and transcription and data entry, among others. Mr. President, we received a proposal from Connected Women, a Filipino job matching tech startup which offers online skills development and remote work opportunities to women. The group was awarded as champion in the e-employment category in the World Summit for Information Society Forum held in Geneva, Switzerland. Connected Women has an interesting training program called ADA, short po for Artificial Intelligence and Data Analytics. They sought TESDA's accreditation to train at least 1,000 women. They equipped them with data labeling skills to take on basic data annotation tasks like image identification, categorizing, and labeling. Halimbawa po, Ginoong Pangulo, dyan po sa picture na ipinapakita sa ating PowerPoint presentation, i-identify po ng data labeler na ito ay kotse, ito ay bahay, ito ay train, ito ay kalsada, etc. After the training, Mr. President, the women beneficiaries can work as digital freelancers through the Connected Women web platform. Napakagandang pagkakataon po ang programang ito para mabigyan ng digital career ang ating mga kababaihan. Ikalima, Mr. President, the designation of the third week of June as Digital Workforce Week. This will promote awareness on evolving jobs and skills requirements in an era of digital technology and innovations. This will help po, Mr. President, yung dissemination information on government assistance, trainings, and certifications, and digital career and business opportunities. Lastly, Mr. President, our goal is to develop support mechanisms like digital libraries, learning hubs, and co-working or shared service facilities. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the failure to recognize and capitalize on the 4IR opportunities will impose considerable risks on our competitiveness as a nation. We need to pass this measure so that we can move beyond, Mr. President, existing models of innovation, entrepreneurship, and digital growth. We need a legal framework to promote and strengthen digital careers, to institutionalize employment, standards for digital career workers, and to enhance competitiveness through access to necessary trainings, skills development, and scholarship programs. In closing, Mr. President, please allow me to state on the record that while we are pushing this particular measure that will greatly advance the utilization of digital technology like robotics and artificial intelligence in many spheres of our lives, especially in the ways we relate to work, we work, and we earn a living, we already have set the directional arrows, the so-called directional arrows through the GMRC and Values Education Act. Thanks to our Senate President Soto, Senator Migs, and Chairman Win Gatchalian, ito'y ganap na batas na. That is another good news, Mr. President. We are confident that our people will not lose the values they cherish as we navigate our path through this momentous and transformational event in our history. Sa inyo pong lahat, maraming salamat at pagpalain po tayo ng ating Panginoong Diyos.
Senator Sani Angara is recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, I proudly stand in support of this Philippine Digital Workforce Competitiveness Act for the consideration of this august body. I am glad to co-sponsor yet another measure with my good friend and seatmate, Chairman of the Senate Committee on Labor, Senator Joel Villanueva, who is no stranger to progressive agendas and advocacies, as well as no stranger to empowering young persons with skills, just as he did in his past career, giving rise to his alternative campaign slogan, Ibalik sa TESDA. Just as I did last week for the Freelancer Protection Act, which he described as a very important game-changing measure. What we are proposing today is timely, not only because it responds to the social distancing demands and the imperatives for alternative forms of employment due to the pandemic, but also for the vision it adopts and seeks to realize about the country's future development and long-term prosperity. A future where every Filipino citizen is equipped with the skills and competencies needed to effectively navigate a rapidly digitalizing world. Sa panukalang batas na ito, Mr. President, minamandato natin ang Estado na paigtingin ang mga programa nito para ituro sa bawat mamamayan ang mga digital skills na napakahalaga sa mundo ngayon. Magbubuo po tayo ng isang Interagency Council for Development and Competitiveness of the Philippine Digital Workforce, pamumunuan po ng NEDA, kasama po ang DOLE, DTI, DICT, DOST, DILG, DepEd, CHED at TESDA. Nakasaad din po sa panukalang batas ang pagkakaroon ng mga public-private partnerships in training and skills development, digital libraries at learning hubs, mga co-working o shared service facilities, at iba pang mga insentibo tulad ng full or partial scholarships para sa training at certification, abroad man o dito sa bansa, at subsidiya para sa paggamit ng mga co-working places. Lahat po ng ito ay mahahalagang elemento sa pakay ng panukala na magkaroon ng support ecosystem para sa paglago ng digital skills sa ating bansa. There is an inside joke among the Filipino gaming community. Whenever a gamer or a heavy gadget user complains about some physical discomfort or personal problem, more often than not, their well-meaning mother or father would tell them, "Ayan kasi, kaka-computer mo yan." As if the computer was the source and cause of all their troubles and woes. There are memes which abound across the internet on this theme alone. Anak, ang taas ng lagnat mo. Sa kaka-computer mo yan. Mama, ang sakit ng paa ko. Sa kaka-computer mo yan. Mama, bakit hindi ako mahal ng taong mahal ko? Sa kaka-computer mo yan. Ngunit sa kabila ng mga patawang ito, hindi po rin maikakaila na may mga Pilipino na umaasenso at nagtatagumpay dahil sa kaka-computer nila. Halimbawa, sa kaka-computer po ni Gian Habelona, isang computer engineering major mula sa Polytechnic University of the Philippines or PUP, nakapaglikha siya ng app para madaling makapag-register, makapagbayad ng tuition at malaman kung may klase ba o hindi ang kanyang mga kaklase. Ang resulta ay ang PUP mobile portal na ginawa ni Gian nung siya'y 19 years old lamang po. Mula sa experience na yon, sinimula niya noong 2013 ang Orange Apps, isang app development company para isulong yung kanyang nagawa sa ibang paaralan. Noong 2017 raw, halos 5,000 estudyante sa 12 paaralan ang gumagamit ng app na ginawa ni Gian. At para sa tagumpay na ito, siya ay itinuring ng Forbes magazine bilang isa sa mga under 30 years old sa Asia. Nandiyan din po si Martin Xavier Peñaflor, ang founder ng Tangere App, isang Filipino market research company na gumagamit ng app-based surveys. Sa kaka-computer ni Martin, nakapaglikha siya ng app para makapaghain ang kanyang kumpanya ng murang business intelligence at analytics services. Kung ang tradisyonal na market survey ay aabot sa 1 o 2 milyong piso, kayang mag-survey ng Tangere Apps sa halagang 70,000 lamang. At nagagawa ito sa pamamagitan ng mga smartphones at mga subscribers na sa kasalukuyan ay umaabot na halos 70,000 nationwide. Ilang beses na rin nag-top ang app na ito na ginawa ni Martin sa Google Play Store. Gian and Martin are just two examples of outstanding Filipinos who are making inroads for themselves because of the skills and competencies they have over digital technologies, as well as simplifying business for many people and many of our countrymen nationwide. But while their experiences are inspirational, Mr. President, not everybody is as well versed and literate with technology as they are. In a rapidly digitalizing world, lacking the right digital skills and competencies can spell a lifetime's worth of missed opportunities and potential unrealized. Indeed, not being tech savvy is to be left behind. That, in fact, is one dimension of the so-called digital divide that doesn't get discussed enough. When we speak about bridging this digital divide, we always bring up issues of lack of access to affordable gadgets and to reliable connectivity. But fast internet and cheap smartphones mean nothing if the people who use them have no clue about the full range of possibilities available online and on how to actually leverage the economic opportunities of the internet and social media. That, Mr. President, is a question of skills. And if we are to truly reap the benefits from this digital world, we need to bridge the widening digital skills gap. This is a global problem, in fact, which even more economically prosperous countries are facing. According to the 2019 Essential Digital Skills Framework Report of the United Kingdom's Department of Education, up to 11 million or 21% of the adult population of the UK lack full basic digital skills, just by way of example. Meanwhile, Mr. President, Coursera's 2019 Global Skills Index estimated that up to 2/3 of the global population fall behind in terms of skills critical to today's tech-based world. In developing economies, this can go as high as 90%. It might be easy to think that with internet penetration in the country reaching anywhere between 60 to 70% and mobile phone subscriptions even surpassing our population, that we in the Philippines are fairly equipped for the digital world. But when we take into account that having essential digital skills entails knowing how to transact via online means, knowing how to distinguish which are trustworthy links against other links, knowing how to post responsibly and legally on social media, or how to troubleshoot your own internet connection, the need for a comprehensive policy on digital skills becomes all the more urgent. What is critical here, Mr. President, is that technological change is far outpacing the rate at which education systems are able to train our people with the requisite skills. Digital technology is causing such rapid transformations in the world of work that jobs are being created for which people do not even have the requisite skills yet. In 2018, the World Economic Forum projected that up to 133 million new jobs will be created out of the deepening synergy between humans, thinking machines, and algorithms by 2022. But to date, various surveys have found that many companies are having difficulties hiring the digital talent they need. One consultancy firm even found that for Q3 2019, US companies had nearly 1 million unfilled IT or information technology jobs. Korn Ferry, a Los Angeles-based management consultancy, projects that by 2030, the global demand for skilled workers will far outstrip supply, resulting in a global talent shortage of up to 85 million people. If this talent crunch is not addressed, the consultancy firm estimated that in 10 years, the financial impact could amount to $8 trillion in unrealized annual revenue, equivalent to the combined gross domestic products of Japan and Germany. Clearly, Mr. President, we need to take even more decisive steps to train, to upskill, and to reskill our people with digital competencies. But where the call for more support for training, reskilling, and upskilling is not entirely new, the COVID-19 pandemic has only made it self-evident that having a competitive digital workforce helps build a safer workplace and ultimately a more resilient economy. For instance, digital workforces can easily transition to the very common work-from-home arrangements present today. Social distancing during work hours would be a non-issue. Enabled with online forms of communication, digital workforces would also be agile enough to work with multiple teams simultaneously whether local or foreign. And even if they were locked down or kept in isolation, they would continue working. There is also a huge economic opportunity that we as a country can capitalize on, given that the Philippines has already been identified as a haven for online freelancers. For instance, in PayPal's 2018 Global Freelancer Insights report, among the 22 countries included and analyzed, the Philippines has one of the highest freelancers per capita ratio, at around 2% or roughly 1.5 to 2 million Filipinos engaged in freelance work. In 2019, Forbes magazine listed the Philippines in 6th place for the fastest growing market for freelancers, recording a 35% income growth from the previous year. According to the Pioneer's 2020 Gig Economy Index, the Philippines emerged as the fastest growing freelancing country in the world, with year-on-year revenue growing by nearly 210%. With these numbers, we were ahead of India, Japan, Australia, Hong Kong, and Mexico. Sa madaling salita, Mr. President, napakahalaga na may sa batas na po ang panukalang ito, hindi lamang dahil makakatulong ito sa pagtugon sa pandemya, kundi dahil palalawakin at pararamihin din niya ang pagkakataon upang umasenso at magtagumpay ang ating mga kababayan. It is one of the possible solutions to the problems plaguing us, perennial unemployment, underemployment, and low incomes, Mr. President. One of the highest in the region, if I'm not mistaken. So thank you, Mr. President, and thank you again to our chair, our hardworking chair of the Labor Committee, Senator Joel, and to our colleagues. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Sani Angara. Senator Bong Revilla is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, among the buzzwords in the labor industry nowadays are upskilling, reskilling, and training. As we tread the fourth industrial revolution, the use of advanced communication and information technology transforms the labor market. With this transformation, it is important that workers obtain the appropriate knowledge and skills that will enable them to be productive and competitive in this industrial world. Hence, the need to update and improve them by upskilling or learning new skills to do their job, reskilling or learning new skills to do another job and training. The 2018 Future of Jobs Report of the World Economic Forum estimated in the years 2018 to 2022, 133 million new jobs will be created while 75 million jobs will be displaced. We want to harness these opportunities and we want our people to belong to the new jobs that will be created. Ginoong Pangulo, magaling, matalino at masipag ang mga Pilipino. Kaya nagtatagumpay sila sa mga larangan kanilang tinatahak. Sa katunayan, marami ng Pilipino ang namamayagpag sa digital labor market at digital economy. At alam kong maganda ang hinaharap natin sa aspetong ito. The great potential of our people, however, has to be coupled with the support and assistance of the government, as well as the cooperation and collaboration of the private sector. Through this, we can ensure the sustainability of jobs and industries in this new era. Ang panukalang batas na ito, inihain ng ating Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development ay naglalayong suportahan ang ating mga manggagawa upang makasabay sila sa mga trabaho sa digital world. Among others, it seeks to improve the digital competence of Filipinos, ensure adequate protection and support for the continuous improvement of their skills, and ensure digital inclusion. Mr. President, it is my honor to co-sponsor Senate Bill number 1834 under Committee Report number 113, which provides for the Philippine Digital Workforce Competitiveness Act. This measure comes hand in hand with the Freelancers Protection Bill that was earlier sponsored by our distinguished chairman, Senator Joel Villanueva, na napakasipag. A significant percentage of the digital workforce are freelancers, and through this bill, we will be able to make them competitive and empowered. Nakalulugod pong malaman na ang sistema ng ating edukasyon ay nakaangkla na sa layuning ito. Kaakibat nito ang mga programa na iba't ibang ahensya ng pamahalaan kaugnay ng digital careers. Bukod dito, malaking tulong ang suporta na ibinibigay ng private sector para sa hangarin nating mapaunlad ang kakayanan ng ating mga manggagawa. One thing that remains a big challenge for us now is the provision of critical information and communication technology infrastructure that will provide fast and reliable connectivity, which serves as the foundation of this industry. Having said that, I believe that with the initiatives of the stakeholders, which will be amplified through the passage of this bill, we are on the right track. We are looking at this revolution from an optimistic and hopeful perspective. Sa pamamagitan ng panukalang batas na ito, matutulungan po natin ang ating mga kababayan at ang ating ekonomiya. Thank you po, Ginoong Pangulo, and may I request that I be made co-author with the permission of the good sponsor, Senator Joel Villanueva. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right.
Mr. President, may we recognize as well Senator Emmanuel Pacquiao, Mr. President.
Senator Manny Pacquiao is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the COVID-19 pandemic showed us that we need to adapt to the digital platform. With the proper support from the government, we can ensure that our countrymen will have the needed skills for global competency. We will be ready to take the challenge in upskilling, reskilling, and training the Filipino workforce in digital technology and innovation. Mr. President, hindi po magpapahuli ang mga Pilipino. Hindi po mahuli ang mga Pilipino. I fully support my good friends and brothers, Senator Joel Villanueva and Senator Sani Angara and Senator Bong Revilla in pushing for Senate Bill number 1834 that seeks to enhance the Philippine digital workforce competitiveness. With this, I would like to be made co-author, Mr. President. Thank you very much, and we will support you all the way. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Senator Pacquiao. Majority Leader.
We recognize as well Senator Christopher Bongo.
Senator Christopher Bongo is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I fully support the measure to enhance the competitiveness of our digital workforce. This measure will go a long way toward ensuring that our workers are properly equipped as the country transitions to the digital age. This is also in line with our push for e-governance. More and more of our people, together with the government, must learn to harness the power of information and communications technology towards a better normal and a brighter future. For these reasons, I would like to be made a co-author of this measure. Of course, with the indulgence of the good sponsor and our colleagues. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may, Mr. Majority Leader.
Senator Villanueva is recognized.
It would be an honor, Mr. President, to accommodate our colleagues' request to be a co-sponsor. Thank you to Senator Bong Revilla, Senator Pacquiao, Senator Bongo. And I was texted by Senator Aimee Marcos and Senator Grace Po. They wanted also to be co-authors, Mr. President, and I would gladly accept it, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President.
As well as, Mr. President, as well as Senator Binay would also like to be made a co-author. And if the sponsor will agree,
you,
Mr.
thank you.
President, myself
Yes.
as well.
Yes, please.
Senator
Thank you.
Zubiri.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Majority Leader?
So thank you, Mr. President. I hope the Secretariat got that for co-authorship. Senator Binay, Senator Marcos, Senator Grace Po, and myself, as well as Senator Villar, Mr. President, for this measure. Senate Bill number 1834. So to allow our colleagues to study the measure further, Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of the measure.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1396 under Committee Report number 65. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Mr. President, there being no other members who wish to interpolate the measure, we can move to close the period of interpolation and so that the author or the sponsor can already move for the sponsorship of the amendments by Monday, Mr. President. I so move, or by tomorrow.
All right. Any objection?
Mr. President, Mr. President.
Mr. President, Senator Tolentino would like to make a manifestation.
Is this the bill relative to the coconut levy, Mr. President?
Yes.
I think I got lost. Just one quick manifestation with the permission of our colleagues and the good sponsor. If I may be permitted. Mr. President, yesterday when I delivered the speech relative to the implementing rules and regulations, I got a quick positive response from the good sponsor, Senator Villar, when she mentioned that when the right solution probably is to make a bill or a legislative measure intact and complete in such a way that it would not permit any implementing or executive bureau or agency to put in some new items not contemplated by the measure. I'm sure that the good sponsor, Senator Villar, when she crafted this meaningful and significant piece of legislation that would alleviate the plight of our coconut farmers, already had that in mind. So, Mr. President, I take this as an opportunity to probably help and assert the legislative might, so to speak, and to infuse once again the principle that the legislation is supposed to have dignity and the bureaucracy. And I'm referring now to the Philippine Coconut Authority. The Department of Agriculture has no right to usurp or even infuse new items not contemplated in the bill crafted by the good Senator Villar. So my point, Mr. President, is that I rely on the good response of Senator, the good sponsor, that this legislation is complete and there is no room for the bureaucracy to usurp or even co-share the legislative powers of the Senate. Salamat po, Mr. President.
All right. Reviewing the measure, I do not see any section there or provision basing, mandating implementing rules and regulations.
Yes. Can I?
Mr. President, may you recognize Senator Cynthia Villar, Mr. President?
Senator Cynthia Villar is recognized the sponsor of the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Francis Tolentino. We will make sure that this bill will be very specific. It's not yet finished. We will introduce many amendments, but when we're finished with it, we will be very sure that everything is clear and the PCA and other agencies which will be involved in implementing this legislation will not have to do an IRR. The bill will be the IRR. Thank you very much.
Mr. President.
Mr. President, may you recognize the Minority Floor Leader?
Senator Dillon is recognized.
Mr. President, I concur with the view that we should try to make the bill as complete as possible so that there will be no need for implementing regulations. However, having said that, I think we cannot prevent the executive from issuing rules and regulations to implement the bill or the law. were, of course, and as I said, in a number of bills that we have passed, I have inserted a provision which effectively says that the implementation of this act shall not be held in abeyance by the non-issuance of the implementing rules and regulations. Having said that, Mr. President, I fully concur. We should try to make it as complete as possible. We will not make any provision which will authorize or which will call for the issuance of the rules and regulations in implementation of the law. But just to put on record my view, that will not prevent the PCA from issuing rules and regulations so long as it is consistent with the policy of the law. If it is a redundancy, so be it, so long as it will not delay the implementation of the bill. And therefore, we will, as I said, I join the view of our colleagues that we will make it as complete as possible. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
All right. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Therefore, I go back to my previous motion, Mr. President, to move to close the period of interpellations.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of interpellation is closed.
Thank you, Mr. President. To allow our colleagues and the sponsor to ready her amendments, I move to suspend consideration of the measure. Unless the lady senator is ready with her amendments, Mr. President.
Senator Villar.
We'll do it on Monday. Monday.
All right.
Okay.
They will.
And I hope those who are going to make amendments to please send to us the amendments that we want to make. Maybe we can make it as a committee amendment. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, we place that on record. Any other comment? Hearing none, the suspension of the measure is in order. Consideration
Mr. President.
is suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. The last item on the agenda, if the Senate President is ready to interpolate the measure, as he's listed as an interpolator, we move to resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1334 under Committee Report number 45, Mr. President.
Yes, any objection? Hearing none, consideration of 1334 is in order. Can we call Senator Sherwin Gatchalian to ascend to the rostrum? And we'll declare a 1 minute suspension, liquidity problems.
Yes, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Sunny, sarap ng kain mo. Ano yan, brother?
Ube pandesal, sarap, no?
Ube my daughter bakes that. My daughter bakes that. Yeah.
Sarap, bro.
So good. Adik ako dyan.
Where's my plate?
May
Annie, where are you? Are you in Manila or Ilocos?
Ilocos, may bago pa, garlic cheese.
Bago yan,
Garlic cheese bread.
Bago
Sarap.
yan. Talaga? The
Oo,
next
Session resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. May we recognize to sponsor the measure the Honorable Senator Risa Ontiveros and to interpolate the distinguished Senate President, Senator Vicente Soto III.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Risa Ontiveros recognized, and Senate President Tito Soto is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Mr. President, yes, thank you, Mr. President. And if Mr. President, you would allow, and if the good gentleman, the good Senate President would also kindly be patient with me, may I just put something of urgent concern on the record before the good Senate President resumes his interpellation, if I may, Mr. President.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. President. In addition to the long-standing importance of preventing teenage pregnancy in the Philippines, I would just like to add, for the record, Mr. President, a note of urgency because of the additional teen pregnancies during our COVID quarantines. The UNFPA and the UP Population Institute study projects studies projected that there will be an additional 18,000 teen pregnancies under our COVID quarantine measures. This, Mr. President, already on top of the 183,967 live births from girls less than 20 years old in 2018. An example, Mr. President, of the increased teen pregnancy during our COVID quarantines, particularly in Zamboanga City. In the first quarter of this year, 2020, before the COVID quarantines, there were 493 teen pregnancies. But in the second quarter, 2020, circa COVID quarantine already, there were monitored 628 teen pregnancies, or an increase, Mr. President, of 135 teen pregnancies. This as reported by the POPCOM Regional Director, Director Reynaldo Wong. Secondly, Mr. President, pre-COVID, the 2018 civil registration and vital statistics of women less than 20 years old showed that more than 130,000 births were fathered by adult men. I say this, Mr. President, because in 2018, there were 2,250 girls who were reported mothers aged under 15 years old, vis-a-vis only 64 reported teenage fathers. Therefore, Mr. President, there is a possible 2,186 births fathered by adult men. For the 15 to 19-year-old age bracket, it was 181,717 mothers, teenage mothers, but only 50,130 teenage fathers, which showed possibly 131,587 births of teenaged girls, but fathered by adult men. And lastly, Mr. President, the trend of teen pregnancy is indeed worrying pre-COVID and in the current pandemic, because while live births of girls aged 15 to 19 years old are declining, the number of births from mothers aged 15 and below is rising from 1,381 in 2011 to 2,250 in 2018. Just for the record, Mr. President, before we continue with the interpellation, and with thanks to the good Senate President for his patience.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. May the distinguished sponsor continue to yield for our continuing interpellations?
Yes, gladly, Mr. President.
Thank you. Well, just to address the initial manifestation of the sponsor, Mr. President, yes, we do agree to the importance of addressing the issue of teen pregnancy. And presently, perhaps in a short while, we will be able to prove that it's being addressed right now. Now, as far as the pandemic is concerned, it's exceptional. These are uncertain times. And the bill is prospective. We can no longer address what's happening now in the pandemic. But nevertheless, let me start, Mr. President.
If I may
During the
also,
first
Mr.
part of my-
President, if I may, Mr. President, I thank the good Senate President for his, again, as in the previous Congress, shared concern to indeed prevent teenage pregnancy. May I also add that, of course, the bill, which I hope can be passed into law, will be progressive, and it may still address teenage pregnancy even under COVID conditions, because the World Health Organization projects that we will still have to contend with the virus for about 2 more years. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. As I said, allow me to continue and we'll
Yes,
present
Mr.
the
President.
facts. Now, during the first part of my interpellations, August 25, I distinctly remembered, I raised 3 main concerns, among other concerns. Senate Bill 1334. These are first, the capabilities of the local government units or the LGUs in implementing the ISDN or the Information and Service Delivery Network for the AHD, Adolescent Health and Development Program in the bill. Number 2, I had also brought out the possible infringement of the constitutionally guaranteed freedom of religion and academic freedom. And number 3, the participation of the private sector in the promotion of the comprehensive sexuality education program or the CSE. After our interpellations then, I looked back at the hearings that were conducted. Hearing that was conducted in the 8th Congress, there was only one that I found. And I noticed that the resource persons and some sectors who were not invited, and mostly those who were invited, the positions that they took and the positions that they manifested are kind of vague, Mr. President, as far as my opinion is concerned. And so, by the reasons of these concerns or foregoing concerns, I sought the stand of the stakeholders relative to the same, and I want to share them with the body. So, if I may have your attention, especially the sponsor, in order
Yes,
to
Mr. President.
consider the perhaps amending subject provisions of 1334 or bringing it back into the drawing board after this. Let me start first with the position of the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines, or ULAP, relative to the point in the bill where the capabilities of the local government units, or LGUs, in implementing the ISDN or AHD, or the Information and Service Delivery Network for Adolescent Health and Development Program. Then, also from the Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines, in relation to the possible infringement of the constitutionally guaranteed freedom of religion and academic freedom. And lastly, the position of the 2 major telecommunications companies in the country, Globe Telecom and Smart Communications, on the participation of the private sector in the promotion of the comprehensive sexuality education program. All right, let me start with the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines, or ULAP. The League of Provinces of the Philippines, LPP, and the League of Cities of the Philippines, LCP, were present in the committee hearing. However, they do not speak on behalf of ULAP, nor their position represent the unified position of the different member leagues that comprises ULAP. So I received this communication from ULAP. It is ULAP's humble recommendation that the contemplated local ISDN or AHD be subsumed under the ambit of the integrated province-wide health system for provinces and integrated citywide health system for highly urbanized cities and independent component cities. They said, we believe that creating another network in all cities and municipalities different from and outside of the said health systems may result to unnecessary extra layer of bureaucracy with duplicate functions, which is inconsistent with the thrusts to enhance government efficiency and to streamline government bureaucracy. To continue, ULAP says, while ULAP recognizes that the above mentioned functions of LGUs are indeed critical and at some point even necessary to achieve the goals of the measure, we would like to respectfully convey the general unfavorable sentiments of LGUs towards proposals to include additional unfunded mandates to them. It is the ULAP's earnest appeal that the proposed additional functions and responsibilities of the LGUs come with supplementary and commensurate funding and, if possible, manpower support. In addition, Mr. President, they also suggested that the inclusion of ULAP and the League of the Provinces of the Philippines in the said Council for wider local government representation and proactive support in the body that will ensure the implementation of the policy in preventing adolescent pregnancies and the institutionalization of social protection for adolescent parents, adolescent parents. May we now find out from the sponsor what is her comment after the ULAP's position?
Yes, Mr. President. I thank the good Senate President for the additional inputs from ULAP, which we will take in addition to the expressed positions of the League of Provinces and the League of Cities. As also I expressed earlier to the good Senate President in response to the point he made that one possible course of action moving forward after this interpellation is, of course, to consider the amendments that I am looking forward to the amendments that the good Senate President will propose with the end in view of accepting as many of them as possible in order to address both the long-standing and the urgent need to prevent teenage pregnancies. Regarding the particular point of ULAP, their recommendation to subsume the ISDN into the integrated province-wide system mandated by the universal healthcare system. At the proper time, I'm willing to work together with the good Senate President to find a proper formulation that will achieve the ends of the ISDN contemplated in this bill, consistent with what is contemplated by the universal healthcare law. Regarding that this would be an unfunded mandate to the LGUs, may I just point out for the attention of our dear colleagues, in the bill under Section 23, annual allocations, upon the proposal of the Philippine Commission on Women in the committee hearing for this bill, they recommended that the GAD budgets or the gender and development budgets of both the involved national government agencies and the local government units to implement this act. So there, Mr. President, I see a space where we can look for existing funds that may be mobilized to achieve the ends of teenage pregnancy prevention. And of course, taking into account also what the good Senate President has said about the sense expressed by ULAP that supplementary funding may also be sought. And last but not the least, on the point of ULAP, that they should be included in the council contemplated by this bill. I will look with a very open mind at including that in a proposed amendment at the proper time, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Then, did you consult the DBM for this particular provision wherein you are talking about funding?
We invited them, Mr. President, but unfortunately they were not present at the hearing.
I'm
Mr.
sorry to hear that. Because if we don't want another spectacle of an unfunded measure.
I agree, Mr. President.
We should consult the DBM first, no? Anyway, allow me to
Will
continue.
do, Mr. President.
Let me continue now. Second point. The CEAP, the Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines. The Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines, or CIAP, is the national association of Catholic educational institutions in the Philippines, founded in 1941, Mr. President. They have more than 1,525 member schools and more than 120 superintendents of Catholic schools. It is a organization which operates through regional educational associations located in 17 regions of the country. And we deemed it necessary to find out from them so that they consulted their schools, they consulted their members, and we received the communication from the National Secretariat of CEAP. For the record, Mr. President, out of the 1,520 presently member schools, to name a few, they are Colegio de San Juan de Letran, Pedro Poveda College, University of Santo Tomas, Adamson University, Ateneo de Manila University, Claret School of Quezon City, Colegio de San Agustin, Holy Spirit School, De La Salle University, College of St. Benilde, Don Bosco School, La Consolacion, Lourdes School of Mandaluyong, Miriam College, San Beda College, Southville International School, Xavier School, St. Paul College and University, St. Scholastica's College, and 1,502 others. Now, this is the position, Mr. President. The CEAP member schools, according to them, I'm quoting from their letter, the CEAP member schools have already integrated in their respective curricula the necessary age and development appropriate reproductive health education to adolescents and is being taught by adequately trained leaders or teachers pursuant to the previously enacted law RA 10354 or the Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Act of 2012, which was a complete package originally authored and sponsored by Senator Pia Cayetano. The CEAP expresses its serious reservations essentially for the following reasons. One, SB 1334 already covers a subject matter that has been comprehensively covered by already existing laws, namely RA 10354 or the Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Act of 2012, as well as the RA 9710 or the Magna Carta of Women in 2009. According to them, passing this measure would only be a redundancy and may very well cause confusion on how to properly implement measures relative to adolescent reproductive health education. SB 1334 already covers a subject matter that has been comprehensively tackled by existing laws, namely RA 10354 as well as RA 9710. That's their first point. The second point of the CIAP, the concept of a standardized comprehensive sexual education, or CSE, mentioned on Section 6 of the bill, pays scant regard to a school's respective identity, vision, and mission, which plays a very crucial role in how these schools implement the provisions of RA 10354. And this measure, if this bill is passed, the compulsion to teach a standardized CSE may also conflict with the academic freedom constitutionally enjoyed by these higher education institutions. So for CIAP member schools, according to them, their Catholic identity, as articulated in their vision and mission, is the very nexus of the instruction and formation of their students. It therefore becomes a very problematic issue for our member schools when a standardized instruction, especially on matters of human sexuality, is being mandated by the state. Also, if no appropriate government funding is given to the private establishments that are supposed to implement this, including our member Catholic schools, it becomes an unfunded mandate, pretty much what the LGUs are saying, and an unreasonable restriction on how our member schools implement what is already existing, existing provisions in RA 10354. Third position of the CIAP, there also appears to be a punitive aspect in Section 6 when it asks for the DepEd through a Philippine accreditation system for basic education board to review the accreditation of schools that are not complying with the provision and delivery of CSE. And while there is such a provision that monitors compliance for basic educational schools, no such counterpart exists for institutions of higher education. It is silent on whether the CHED and the TESDA will also do the same for institutions of higher learning. CIAP continues also to question why accreditation is being used as the tool for guaranteeing that schools will comply. So they're asking, is it now mandatory? When accreditation is a voluntary process undertaken by schools in order for them to achieve levels of excellence not otherwise achieved by simply maintaining the minimum standards being regulated by government through the DepEd. Fourth position of the CIAP. Section 12 of SB 1334 provides that reproductive health services may be availed by adolescents from trained service providers in public and private facilities, including school clinics and school-linked health centers. That's part of the bill. So according to them, and they quoted that, to continue what they're saying, not only does this provide a certain level of concern for our member Catholic schools that need to adopt a plan on how to properly implement this, which can at the same time be harmonized with the basic Catholic principles on human sexuality. But more importantly, and on the secular level, it already conflicts, or if it does not, it overreaches, as it already includes school clinics and school-linked health centers, and likewise excludes the participation of the minor's parents in decision-making. Unlike that found in Section 7 of Republic Act 10354, which provides that family planning services shall likewise be extended by private health facilities to paying patients, period. That minors will not be allowed access to modern methods of family planning without written consent from their parents or guardians, except when the minor is already a parent or has had a miscarriage. CIAP also requests that the access to reproductive health services be slightly modified in the sense that the role of the parents of the adolescent who is sexually active should not be excluded from the contemplation of the law. At the end of the day, that adolescent is still under the supervision of her parents. Fifth position. Mahaba yung sulat nung CF eh. Section 13 of Senate Bill 1334 provides that discriminatory and exclusionary practices that harm and discourage the education of adolescent parents shall be prohibited. In truth, this concern has already been addressed by an existing provision in our Magna Carta for Women and even clearly stated in Section 13 of Republic Act 9710. No school shall turn out or refuse admission to a female student solely on the account of her having contracted pregnancy outside of marriage during her term in school. In fact, other provisions in RA 9710 also lend support to Section 13 thereof when it prohibits discriminatory practices against women. The provision in Section 13 of SB 1334 is already superfluous and may even create a new myriad of problems for schools insofar as there is no vagueness in what there is vagueness in what discriminatory and exclusionary practices are and to what extent it is being harmful and discouraging to the education of adolescent parents. The provision above quoted ought not and should not be used as a shield too when a student has to be meted out sanctions, suspension, or expulsion if the said student is found to have violated other provisions in the school's disciplinary handbook. This is the reason why we find that provision in the proposed bill to be very problematic. And they continue. To illustrate this point, an adolescent student who was found to have committed a sexual act under scandalous circumstances and therefore a violation of the school's handbook for immorality cannot use her pregnancy as a shield from the consequences of her actions. While Catholic schools employ compassionate justice in deliberating on disciplinary cases like these, there are still circumstances, as exemplified by the illustration, where sanctions have to be meted out. That is the point being raised by the Catholic Education Association of the Philippines. May we find out from the sponsor why they did not invite these Catholic schools in the hearing?
Nibita ba natin yung Isaiah? Because?
Wala. Wala eh.
I see. Mr. President, I thank the good Senate President for laying out the 5 points of the Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines. And I was happy to hear the initial roster of members, including my 2 alma mater, St. Scholastica's College, Manila, and the Ateneo de Manila University. Unfortunately, SEAP was not invited to this hearing in the 18th Congress, 17, because apparently they were not on the radar of the committee. But since we are now in the period of interpolation and I hope to move forward eventually to the period of amendments, I am happy to address their concerns here on the floor. Gaya ng sinabi ni Senate President, mahaba yung sulat nila and this can only help to further improve the bill. To the first point of SEAP, that the comprehensive sexuality education has already been integrated, is already being taught by trained teachers, and that there might be a redundancy or confusion. Indeed, Mr. President, while the Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Law already wrote CSE implementation into law, much work has to be done. For instance, DepEd, the main agency in CSE implementation under the RPRH law, was still conducting their workshops on the finalization of policy and implementing guidelines on CSE as late as September 2017. There had been an impression from one of PLCPD's consultation meetings that the pace of DepEd's implementation had been slow. And therefore, in order to assist this process and to accelerate it from its current slowness, therefore also there is that provision in the current bill, Mr. President, about the training of teachers, guidance counselors, and school supervisors on CSE. A 2018 UNAIDS Guide on Sexuality Education reports that competent teachers who have achieved a comfortable level with the subject has been associated with an increased likelihood that they will deliver health and well-being programs with high fidelity and quality associated with positive impact on the students' reproductive health behaviors. So that is one response I could make, Mr. President, to this initial concern expressed by SEA. Moving on for now to their second concern, that this would become under the current bill standardized CSE. It would not be standardized, Mr. President, because also in faithfulness to the spirit of the RPRH law, what would be mandated is age appropriate and development appropriate comprehensive sexuality education. And of course, in every particular school setting, given the charism of the school or the tradition of the school, its particular worldviews and approaches to the different issues faced by young people growing up and in the formal education sector, the core CSE content as prescribed by DepEd and CHED would be adapted to the particular school setting. Regarding the conflict with academic freedom, there is no intention at all to attack any of the constitutional principles, including this one. And I would, additionally, Mr. President, since the good Senate President mentioned earlier the concern about religious freedom at the proper time, I can accept an amendment adding explicitly respect for our religious freedom. And then to the third concern, I'm sorry, Mr. President, still on the second concern of SEA on the unfunded mandate, again, I wish to reiterate that precisely section 23 of the bill on annual allocations recommends that the GAD budgets of the national government agencies and LGUs be used to implement this act, thereby preventing that it become merely an unfunded mandate. And as to unreasonable restriction, again, wala pong intensyon yung panukala na mag-exercise ng anumang unreasonable restrictions sa ating mga paaralan. To their third concern, Mr. President, that the bill would be punitive because it is mandatory. I am sure, Mr. President, that the good Senate President also is aware that when it comes to bills that this representation sponsors, one of the sections that I am most open to considering amendments to would be the section on penalties. So I'm willing to work with him on finding acceptable language that reflects both the sense of the Senate about implementing effective programs on important and urgent issues like teenage pregnancy without being overly punitive or while being as liberal as possible on this aspect, Mr. President. To their fourth concern of SEAP on the reproductive health services, that this may lead to conflicts or to overreaching, that it may exclude the participation of parents, and that parents are not included or would in effect be excluded from the implementation of this law. In fact, Mr. President, the bill speaks of the role of parents and guardians inside and outside the schools through through Section 8, comprehensive sexuality education for parents and guardians. Learning also, for example, Mr. President, from a report from the United Kingdom, which stated that engaging parents made a big contribution to their goals. The UK's Teen Pregnancy Prevention Plan also included holding schools responsible to involve parents in the students' SRH education and implementing local SRH programs like Speak Easy sessions for parents and guardians. It is known by all of us, parents as well, that families and peers are influential in shaping beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors of young adolescents, especially in their SRH. And it is for this and other reasons, Mr. President, that medically accurate CSE for parents and guardians is highly encouraged. Kasi po, Mr. President, if myths and misperceptions make up the sex talks between parents and our children, parents would risk endangering our children with misinformation that may result not only in unintended pregnancies, but also our children being infected by sexually transmitted infections, even HIV and AIDS. On the other hand, Mr. President, positive family relationships, particularly communication about sexual behavior and romantic relationships, connectedness, and family cohesion have all been associated with reduced teen pregnancy and delayed sexual debut. So for this and many other reasons, Mr. President, indeed, itong panukalang batas natin not only welcomes or accepts but embraces and encourages yung partisipasyon ng ating mga magulang inside and outside the schools, including through comprehensive sexuality education of our children in order to reduce teenage pregnancy, Mr. President. And last but not the least, the fifth concern of SEAP, of course, without prejudice to returning to any of these points as the good Senate President may wish, they're concerned that discriminatory and exclusionary practices are prohibited, asking to what extent they are harmful. Of course, Mr. President, I am sure nagkakaisa po tayong lahat dito sa Senado na any discriminatory and exclusionary practices against any Filipino citizen, lalo ng ating mga anak, would indeed harm them. So the concern, to continue, Mr. President, of SEAP, that this is already included in the Magna Carta of Women. And yes, indeed, Mr. President, so there is no harm in, at higit pa doon, it could bear repeating or affirmation in the bill. And also the concern of SEAP that the sanctions would be, or rather the sanctions of schools under their student handbooks would be prohibited, even regarding scandalous behavior, and yet citing the spirit that most, if not all, schools seek to practice of compassionate justice vis-a-vis their students. Regarding this fifth and last point, Mr. President, I would venture to say na kung gusto rin natin na maging mas maluwag at hindi punitive sa mga usapin ng mandatory requirements sa mga paaralan, sa usapin ng accreditation, that we could also adopt an equal or a commensurate, precisely spirit of compassionate justice vis-a-vis any of our children or any of our students na maaring malagay sa na malagay sa sitwasyon ng teenage pregnancy para to allow them every opportunity even after they give birth, even while as teenage parents they are taking care of their child, na bumalik at magpatuloy at makapagtapos sa sa pag-aaral para maghanda sa decent jobs at maghanda sa maayos na pagtaguyod ng kanilang pamilya. Having said that, Mr. President, of course, again, we can amend the particular provision to make it clear that the discriminatory or exclusionary practice would be based on pregnancy, to be specific about that and not to embrace any scandalous or other prohibited behavior in the school's students' handbook. For the record, Mr. President, regarding how discriminatory and exclusionary practices indeed harm our teenage parents, consequences of documented consequences of the expulsion of pregnant students would be they may be forced out of their homes and may end up living on the streets, where they may be forced by circumstance into commercial sex work. So worse, going to worse, from the frying pan into the fire. Pangalawa, Mr. President, this may force them into early marriage, even even against, or rather facing the fact, Mr. President, na yun na nga, underage pa po sila para sa isang seryosong responsibilidad tulad ng pag-aasawa. And last but not the least, Mr. President, this would discourage their return to school, lalo na po sa mga estudyanteng mahihirap. So lalo pong ma-exacerbate yung cycle of intergenerational poverty, Mr. President.
My opinion, Mr. President, is that, Your Honor, is that the last concern that the sponsor mentioned is being addressed by the RH law. Now, Section 8, I looked at Section 8 that she mentioned, the distinguished lady mentioned about the participation of parents. Capacity building, ang sinasabi dito, pero there is no direct participation of the parents to agree on the CSE, or the formulation. Wala doon eh. Yun ang sinasabi ng CIAP. Now, the explanation given to us, how I wish, Mr. President, that the distinguished sponsor explain this to CIAP, not to us. You know, what we're hearing now, I doubt if a majority of the members of the Senate agree to what they're hearing now. The explanation be given to them because they're the ones that are saying that this is how they look at the bill, and I tend to agree with them, and that is the reason I asked for their opinion. The ULAP, the SEAP, the Catholic. We're only 22, 23 members here listening to this. But there are 1,520 Catholic schools that will be affected, and they do not agree, Mr. President, to the contents. Now, all right. Tabi na muna
Mr.
natin,
President,
because
if I
the
may,
sponsor is ready.
yes.
Allow me to finish, please. The
Yes, Mr.
sponsor is
President.
ready to accept amendments according to her. So, tabi na muna natin, because again, what they are saying is that their main concern is that the bill is redundant to RH law. If the RH law is not being implemented well, then we should ask them to implement the program well. Now, let's move on because, as I said, the explanation, should be addressed to these associations or these members of the associations. As a matter of fact, I'm surprised that if there is a big chunk of the bill concerning sexuality education, we should have at least referred this measure also to the Committee on Basic Education and more so the Committee on Higher Education. I wish I could find out from the members of that committee or the chairman of that committee their position on the matter. So perhaps that is another let's say a road to take. Ask the two committees to look into this particular matter because this is very this is a not just a large, but exceedingly high point being raised by Catholic 1,500, more than 1,500 Catholic schools, Mr. President. All right, so now,
Mr.
as I said,
President,
if
just
the
to put
sponsor is
on
ready to
record,
accept amendments, I will move on. Unless,
yes,
yes.
Mr. President, I just like to make of record that I would gladly write to the SEAP. In fact, I have been invited to speak at symposia, and I have been doing so in the past several years since the passage of the RH law, precisely regarding the implementation of comprehensive sexuality education, not only in my alma mater, but in various schools. So gladly taken, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Now, let's set that aside and address it at the proper time, which at this point I suggest that the committees on higher education and the committees on basic education be consulted. On the third point, during the August 25 interpellation, from the telecommunications companies, we asked them for their opinion, Mr. President, because the hearings that they participated in, if I'm not mistaken, was in the 17th Congress. The 17th Congress. So we asked them on their perspective on SB 1334. Let me start with the Smart Communications Incorporated. In the Smart Communications letter, dated September 3, 2020, just recently, this is their company's stand on Section 11 of Senate Bill 1334. They say they support the government's commitment and mandate to provide Filipino adolescents full and comprehensive information and access to educational materials in respect of their sexual and reproductive health and care. However, ayun na mabigat no? Yung however. However, the promotion of CSE may prove difficult to operationalize, mainly because the company is unable to determine and narrow down the intended recipients of the CSE. This is due to the fact that a large majority of the network's subscribers are prepaid users, and because there is yet no legal requirement for the registration of prepaid SIM mobile numbers, the company is effectively blind to the user's profile, including their age. To quote Smart's in concluding statement, forward ko na, concluding statement nila, while our participation in this initiative would be highly effective if the goal is to reach as many people as possible, regardless of demographics, we cannot say the same for targeted messaging, which may not be appropriate for sending to all subscribers in view of their sensitive content. All right. Moving to Globe Telecom Incorporated. While Globe, ito sa kasama na sa sulat nila ito. While Globe interposed no objection on the bill during the previous Congress when it was introduced and discussed on the floor, Globe Telecom Incorporated stated in its September 8, 2020 letter, mas recent pa ito, that, I quote, after a more careful scrutiny of the refiled bill and in light of the existing health emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, there is a need to reassess our position on the matter. The following reasons and statements were given by Globe to substantiate its apprehension on its participation or involvement in the promotion of comprehensive sexuality education provided in Senate Bill 1334. Mr. President, this is, again, to continue Globe's message. There is a surge in demand for connectivity, for working from home, online learning, telemedicine, e-government, enabling contactless payments, and generally, due to the digital transformation that is unfolding before us, All of these activities have severely strained our networks, necessitating the expenditure of substantial capital to improve the network and roll out more telecommunications infrastructure. Hence, at this point, and perhaps for the long term, as we beef up our own network for the new normal, private participation in the promotion of CSE is not feasible. Continue. SMS contributes to the congestion of the network, which also causes the perceived poor quality of connectivity in the country. They also say, targeted SMS to promote CSE will be better achieved in a regime where all SIM cards are registered, since roughly 95% of mobile phone subscribers are prepaid cards. It is next to impossible to deliver targeted messages. The receipt of unwanted messages is among the complaints raised by subscribers against telecommunication companies. As crafted, the incentives promised to the private sector for participating in the promotion of CSE is vague, opaque, and too general to attract private sector participation. Moreover, the incentives dangled in Section 11 runs counter to the current thrust of the government to rationalize incentives. And finally, they say the CSE information overload through various channels may be counterproductive in the long run, as this may tend to numb the target audience to the point of filtering out such CSE information. With that, Mr. President, the sponsor might want to react before I
Yes, of
continue.
course. Yes, thank you, Mr. President. What we know, Mr. President, is that when we consulted both Globe and Smart, and the good Senate President is correct, this was during the 17th Congress, at that time they interposed no objection. But now, if in response to the good Senate President's query, they have changed their minds, Smart saying that this may prove difficult to implement, and Globe saying that it is not feasible, then we are happy to amend our bill. What we are leveraging simply, Mr. President, is global experiences on, in fact, the successes of telecoms as platforms for CSE education. At sana nabalitaan din nila yung sinabi ko sa simula or sa pagpapatuloy ng ating interpellation, how much more urgent, in fact, the participation sana of the private sector could be to address preventing teenage pregnancies precisely under pandemic quarantine conditions. And also, just for the record, Mr. President, though misperceptions, misinformation, and myths exist in the digital realm, it also provides an avenue for correcting such misinformation. Social media and ICT have enormous potential to provide a direct, anonymous, and non-judgmental information on sexuality and relationships. And lastly, Mr. President, I spoke earlier about leveraging global experiences. As I mentioned in the previous interpellation, and I think it is still illustrative now, yung mga successful examples na nabalitaan natin sa Rwanda at saka sa Cote d'Ivoire. They both used mobile for reproductive health or accelerated school pregnancy reduction plans using interactive messaging system, using a phone line. And these reached mobile phone users with information about puberty, preventing sexually transmitted infections, and preventing unintended pregnancy, and where to find health services. They provided referrals to health services and health centers And in addition, health information and services will be disseminated through SMS messaging. But so ganun po, Mr. President, kung nag-iba na po yung kaisipan nung dalawang kumpanya mula nung nakaraang kongreso hanggang ngayon, as I said earlier, I will be happy to amend our bill, Mr. President.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Well, of course, we are expecting that. But I'm not surprised because the Smart Communications and the Globe Incorporated,
Excuse me.
I'm not surprised that they changed their minds. Only fools do not change their minds because they were not well appraised of what it's really the content. No? Kaya ang sagot we have interposed no objection. Nung araw yun, ibang usapan Iba't saka hindi naintindihan masyado, Mr. President. Ngayon naintindihan Naintindihan yung what entails sa kanila. Hindi nila alam anong incentive, ano laman ito. In much the same way that I am seeking now the position of the DepEd. Kaya sabi ko we should consult the Basic Education Committee and also the Higher Education Committee on this. Because we asked the DepEd for their position. The position that they placed or that said in the hearing, and we reviewed the hearing, was kind of vague. It didn't really say that all the contents they approve was parang in principle, ganun yung mga binitawan. So I'm seeking the position of the DepEd now. We have not received it yet. We have not received from DDM. And then perhaps, may I find out from the sponsor if you consulted the Department of Finance on this matter because of the incentives that you are going to give the private sector?
We did not, Mr. President.
All right. So again, I think we should go back to the drawing board and find out from the Department of Finance their position, the Department of Budget their position, and then our two other committees on the matter. So when we receive that, perhaps we will be ready to propose any action or amendments to the measure. At this point, Mr. President, I suspend my interpellation and await the provisions or the positions that we are seeking. Thank you. We thank the distinguished lady for answering our questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will continue to be ready to answer any further questions as well as, of course, from the other colleagues, Mr. President. I wish to reiterate yung sinabi ko po sa simula nung pagpapatuloy ng ating interpellation na there is an additional sense of urgency now na nasa ilalim tayo ng mga pandemic quarantine conditions na itatala na ng POPCOM, yung tumataas na incidence ng teenage pregnancy sa ilalim nitong mga quarantines, and we could perhaps get other subnational data aside from what I presented earlier from Zamboanga City, at lalo na humaharap tayo sa posibleng 2 taon pa nitong pandemic and on and off periods of time na baka kailangan nating self-impose na mga quarantines sa ating mga LGUs. I think that our young people, our teenagers, will still need the benefit of such a bill. And of course, even after the COVID-19 pandemic, approaching as it seeks to the prevention of teenage pregnancy mula hindi lamang sa mga national experiences natin so far sa pagpapatupad ng mga naunang batas tulad ng responsible parenthood and reproductive health, pero yung mga leksyon din ng ibang mga bansa which successfully through partnerships among parents, teachers, local government units, and national government agencies successfully help prevent teenage pregnancies, to give their children, to give their students that much more strong chance at a good education, decent jobs, and quality family lives. So maraming salamat po sa good Senate President and maraming salamat din po, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Senator Raymond.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. Thank you. We'd just like to make a short manifestation. Mr. President, we recognize the valuable points raised by no less than our Senate President, and we value all the concerns that he has brought to our attention, especially, Mr. President, the issue on religious freedom and education, particularly in the technical vocational education and higher education. As chair of the Committee on Higher Education and Vocational Education, we'd like to put on record that we are committing ourselves to studying further this measure, and we will, at the proper time, introduce amendments, if not ask further questions. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, distinguished sponsor.
Thank you. And likewise, Mr. President, same with the comment of Senator Joel, as the chairman of the Basic Education Committee, I was looking through the bill, and basic education plays a major role in the activities of this bill. We're also committed to review the bill and also work with the sponsor and the Senate President on the concepts of the measure, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before we suspend consideration of the measure, I do believe also, and I'm sure the good sponsor will agree with me, that if we want to deter teenage pregnancy, we must really seriously look into considering the lifting of the statutory rape age. I've been saying that, I've been championing this from day one. Our statutory rape age, Mr. President, is the lowest in the world. We only have another one at 12 years old. There's only one other country that has the same age, which is, I think, an African, Central African country. Ghana, I'm not sure if it's Ghana or I don't know which country in Africa. But there's only two countries, the Philippines and that African country. Everybody else has raised it to an average of 16 years of age, Mr. President. In other countries where it's 16 years and above, obviously, they always joke about when you date a younger person, it's always jailbait. Makukulong ka niyan, no matter what, no? So that's a deterrence. And that's why I'm happy that there will be a hearing about that bill. And I hope I can get the support of all my colleagues. I think any decent chamber, whether it's legislative or parliamentary, will agree with me that we really have to increase the statutory rape age in our country. And that goes for men and women, because there are actually young boys that are raped, and you know, the penalties are just lasciviousness and you know, it's bailable offenses. So kawawa itong mga kabataan na to. Senator Angara, I think Mr. President would like to be recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. And that's another priority measure that we also need to tackle, Mr. President. I'm likewise an author of that bill. It's called the Anti-Child Rape Bill. And it's really about time to update our antiquated laws on child rape, Mr. President. And I join the good majority floor on that advocacy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Sonny Angara, after which Senator Amy Marcos.
Senator Sonny Angara is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to support the majority leader in his quest to regulate some of these things, because he is the acknowledged expert on dating young members of the fairer sex, Mr. President.
I knew that was coming, Mr. President. Unfortunately, I knew that was coming. But, you know, to counter, I would just say that stands as a warning to our single members of the Senate. And there's only one single member at this point in time, so he can no longer he can no longer date, rather, teenagers, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senator Amy Marcos would also like to be recognized.
Yes, thank you very much, Majority Leader, and please count on our support. I also authored a similar bill simply to raise us to the global level of at least 18 years old. This is a disgraceful state of affairs, particularly in the context of the rise in child online pornography, for which the Philippines has become the epicenter of the globe. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Senator Amy Marcos. Senator Risa Ontiveros, Mr. President, would also like to be recognized.
Yes.
Senator
Ontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you so much to the good majority leader for raising that point at this time that we are discussing various bills regarding our children and young people. I'm also an author of a bill, a similar bill, raising the age of consent and in effect expanding the protection, yes, against statutory rape for our children aged 13 to 17 years old. And in fact, Mr. President, I just like to manifest this on the floor that I'm formally, I think that those bills are in the very capable hands of our good chairman of the Committee on Justice. And as the chair of as a member of that committee, not just the chair of the Committee on Women, but as a member of that Committee on Justice and as a principal author of the bill, I will in fact formally request the good chair of the Committee on Justice if he would consider to form a subcommittee and allow me and allow other authors to try to accelerate our deliberations on those bills. Indeed, as in the matter of preventing teenage pregnancy under pandemic and quarantine conditions, there is an additional urgency about this, Mr. President. And additionally, urgency also because it has moved forward in the House of Representatives. So that's wonderful news from our counterparts in the House of Reps. So thank you very much, Mr. President, good majority leader, and the other colleagues who are championing children's rights. Salamat po.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, ma'am. Absolutely. I believe Senator Gordon is already scheduled the hearing for it. We just don't know what date. I could see Senator Ralph Recto listening intently to the conversation on this issue. Maybe he would like to comment. No, maybe not, Mr. President. Mr. President, with that, I move to suspend consideration of the measure.
Is there any objection? Senate Bill number 1334 suspended.
Mr. President,
Thank you,
before we
Mr.
adjourn,
President.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Madam Sponsor. Mr. President, before we adjourn, just some housekeeping matters. With the permission of the body, I move that we proceed with the Senate President's designation of the Senate conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1520 and House Bill number 6756. This is the Act establishing medical scholarship and return service program for deserving students. Mr. President, would you designate the members, Mr. President?
Mr. President, the Senate President has authorized me to name the following members of the Senate conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1520 and House Bill number 6756. And the conferees are Senator Joel Villanueva as the chairperson, Senator Nancy Binay, Senator Angara, yours truly, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Risa Ontiveros for the minority.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, no further agenda today. I move that we adjourn session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow. That's Wednesday, September 16, 2020. Before we adjourn, Mr. President, Senator Frank Lilon would like to be recognized.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President, would the Office of the Majority Leader already have a listing of the possible agenda starting on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday next week to enable us to prepare? Because I noticed that more and more bills are being reported out, which is good, but in fairness, give us a little time to study these bills. Otherwise, we will be asking for deferment on the scheduled consideration of the measure. So may we be allowed, may we be given the information on the bills that will be on the calendar next week.
As of the onset, Mr. President, I just conferred with my legislative staff. Nothing yet in particular except for the major ones that we mentioned earlier, Mr. President. That's the CREATE bill. We'll also be finishing up also our COCO levy measure of Senator Cynthia Villar. The measures that were sponsored earlier also by Senator Joel, which are the freelancer bill, and but we'll furnish a copy, Mr. President, hopefully by the end of the week to Senator Julon's office and
Yes.
our colleagues.
Mr. President, we hope that
Personal session.
a good office of the majority leader can space the or yes can give us enough space or spacing in order that we can have sufficient time, not on every bill, but on the very critical bills. We know what these bills are, to give us more time to study it. That's all our request, Mr. Chair.
Will do, Mr. President. We will release a list by Thursday, Mr. President, for everyone's pursuit. So with that, Mr. President, I move for my previous motion to adjourn session till tomorrow, 3:00 in the afternoon, Wednesday.
Is there any objection? There being done, the session is adjourned until 3:00 in the afternoon of Wednesday, September 16, 2020.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone.